welcome to everyone to another MassMedic virtual event. I'm Rachel Robinson, Vice President at MassMedic, and we're thrilled to see so many of you again for a repeat. So thank you to everyone who's been supporting all of these webinars for the last, oh gosh, it's almost a year now. And for those of you first timers, I hope you have a really great time. I know you're going to learn a lot today. So just a few quick reminders before we get started. If you would please keep yourself on mute. We do want to make sure we minimize any background noise. This program will be recorded, so you will all be receiving a recording of this afterwards, as well as the slides and contact information for our speaker. And if you have questions, we absolutely encourage them. Please put them into the chat section at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to plug those in throughout the event as questions come up, and then Andy and I will do some Q&A at the end. So I think that's probably a really good overview to get started. And so I would like to introduce Andy Rogers at CoolTech to take things over.
Thanks, Rachel. Nice to be with you guys today. I recognize a few of the names on the call list. Hi, to those of you who may know me. So I'm Andy Rogers, VP of Business Development at CoolTech. We're a product development firm based in Baltimore. We do quite a bit of work up in Boston, and we're kicking off our relationship with MassMedic, with this webinar. So excited to share a case study that we have that highlights speed to clinical data, which is really, I think, most important in medical device development. How are you going to get to clinical trials most efficiently? And so this case study, the CoolStat platform, brings that to light, some key considerations and really a framework that I feel like a lot of people have, but it's always just good to see case studies that highlight this framework. So I'll walk you through that. But first, so I'm with CoolTech. Let me see if I can share. Here. Be a good thing if I could move the slides. There we are. So I'm with CoolTech in Baltimore. We're looking for the tough product development challenges. We've been in business for almost 23 years, and we're a multidisciplinary team looking for those problems where there's no clear solution. So in markets such as in vitro diagnostics, pharma, drug delivery systems, medical devices, of course, and surgical, which is really a subset of MedTech. And we're an employee-owned company based in Baltimore. 2 or 3 years ago, the founders of the company sold the company to all of its employees, which I think is a fairly unique structure in our market. So we are all owners of the company. We've been around for 23 years, like I said, 10% stable growth. We're not trying to grow super fast. And I think what's unique about CoolTech is we hire almost exclusively out of undergraduate universities and apply very rigorous mentoring methods to our team. And so we're a pretty young team, but they're very experienced in a great blend of top talent and graybeards, which now I am one. So our team is split between mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, computer engineering, and we have a handful of industrial designers on staff. So we do complete full scope development here in Baltimore. And like advertised in the emails that went out, we're trusted by top global companies such as Bio-Rad, Becton Dickinson, Thermo Fisher. Some of the companies we work with up in Boston include Abiomed, as well as a host of other startup device companies. So that was CoolTech. Switching gears to this actual case study, just full disclosure, CoolTech we have our own pipeline of products that we develop. We've had a few successful exits in the past. Thermo Fisher bought a diagnostic product from us. Cooper Surgical bought a surgical tool stabilizer from us, and this is another spin-off company. CoolTech was a spin-out of CoolTech. And so this is the CoolStat product. So speed to clinical data, why are we here? So speed is most critical, particularly for novel devices, which the CoolStat is, a novel therapeutic device. You need to prove the efficacy, which is the top risk, right? So the primary focus from the beginning should be collecting human safety data and really deferring a lot of the commercialization features and activities until after the trial, until you have that data that proves that the therapy works. So CoolTech saved CoolTech 6 to 12 months in getting the clinical data by following the methods which are outlined in this talk to get their product CoolStat into trials. So the key word here again is deferred. we deferred $1 to $2 million in development costs in getting to the trial. Really, what is it? What's the bare minimum you need to do to get your product in trials and then run that trial to get the data you need to then add additional features after that trial is completed? So there's two general approaches to launch. You know, the grossly oversimplified approach is, you know, develop the product, the commercial product, run your trial, and then launch that product. What we're talking about here is shortening your development time with a simpler product, run your trial, but then in parallel, you can add your sort of non-safety commercial features while the trial is going on so that you're ready to launch the ultimate commercial product sooner. You're de-risking earlier. Really, the trial and efficacy is the biggest risk. And that's something that we talk a lot about at CoolTech, you know, with our customers, is what are the risks to the program, to the technology, integration, use case, everything, and de-risk it early. So clearly the trial is important. So that's the crux of this talk. So when you sit down and start to think about, you know, if you're an entrepreneur, startup company, or, you know, new product introduction in a global company, you know, what is it that you want to develop when you're writing requirements? You know, do you develop, you know, the minimum viable product, like get scrappy, buy things from Amazon and just build your prototype? Can't really do that for a clinical trial. And on the other end of the spectrum is, you know, developing the commercial product, which the prior slide kind of highlighted. Yes, you could do that. Is that the most efficient way? You know, maybe, maybe not. So kind of a middle ground here is this clinical trial device that I'll be talking about today, and the approach. Another way to think about it is, you know, your clinical trial device is really, you know, all the functionality and essential safety features. Those are a must to kind of run any trial, right? But then, you know, in parallel with your trial or after your trial, depending on their funding and risk and various other things, you add your non-essential safety and improvements you find from that study, you know, after the fact. Okay, so what is the CoolStat? This is a multimedia presentation. I have two videos. Luckily, there's really no soundtrack, so we don't have to worry about that. So just watch the video here. So it's an IV pole mounted product for use in hospital, ICU environment. Mask was designed, and really to dry the air, there's this removable and replaceable desk cartridge to dry the air, you know. And CoolTech designed that nasal mask.
I don't think anybody is seeing the video.
Oh no!
I was just about to jump in with that. Sorry.
Thanks for piping up. Wow. Okay. Sorry about that. Let me see. I'll share my whole screen. How's that? Try this again. Is that better? Can you guys see that now?
Perfect.
All right. Sorry about that. There's that desk and cartridge I was mentioning before. All right. So this product is currently in clinical trials. I should mention that. So it's still in development. But there's another slide that, another video that highlights the cooling therapy in a little bit more detail. The idea is to harvest evaporative cooling. The evaporative cooling effect cools the body down. So you need moisture at those mucous membranes to evaporate. And when the mucous membranes run out of moisture, CoolStat actually irrigates the nasal turbinates as well to keep the evaporative effect going. That's where, you know, to keep the cooling going, you add more moisture there. Okay, so first indication CoolTech is targeting is neurogenic fever. But when you sit back and think about targeted temperature management, there's a whole host of other indications: sudden cardiac arrest, migraine, massive market, and other indications that we're exploring. So getting into the crux of this talk, so what makes up the product, you know, when you have to develop it? So looking around, so there's the cartridge you saw in the video, there's a off-the-shelf esophageal or bladder temperature probe that plugs in here, provided by the hospital. There's a built-in battery. You can see the spike here. It's not labeled, but this is what runs up to an IV bag to then irrigate the nasal turbinates. There's the tubing out to the mask. There's filters, pole mounts, and then of course there's, you know, closed loop temperature control based on the signal from that input. So what's the regulatory path for this product? So clearly we need IDE approval to run a trial. We're going de novo. So that's the approach. I say we, I'll say CoolTech, the company, not KeyTech. So that's the regulatory path. The commercial path, again, would be similar to the prior diagram, is adding, you know, non-safety commercial features, do your V&V, and then launch after you've gotten approval. So I feel like most people here are in this market, but you know, I think it's worth just pausing for a second. When should you start planning for this trial device? So you know you have a product that's going to require approvals. You're working with a regulatory consultant. KeyTech does not offer that service, but for this spin-off company, certainly we've learned a lot over the years in developing this product. You know, you have a functional prototype that shows promise, maybe in animal studies. You know, in preclinical testing, you've shown that it is effective, and you do have some sort of draft design documentation in place. So that's when you start thinking about what risks to the patient or to the product can be managed by monitoring study personnel versus with the device itself. What functionality can you leave out of the device to develop it faster and cheaper, and put the onus on the clinical study design, and which features can you defer to after you've proven the product, you know, in the trials. So this is the framework that that we came up with, and you know, I'm sure everyone on this call is familiar with each of these areas. But when you break down what goes into the product design, how do you test the product before the trial, how do you build the trial devices, and then how do you run that trial? All those things are important to consider and key to getting the clinical data that's so important to your company. So I'm going to break down this framework, walking through the CoolStat case study here for you now. So first, design. Connectivity was not critical, so we left that out of the product. It avoids a whole host of R&D efforts, as well as cybersecurity concerns when you start looking at products in hospitals. And of course, it saves the testing time, the development time, and the verification time. So that's important. Sorry. There we go. design the product as a platform for the ultimate commercial product. So that's also key for these types of programs. So what can you design the electronics such that future features like connectivity and advanced algorithms can be added to the product, once the trial is complete. The battery for this system was intended really for the clinical trial device was intended to be only for backup and not the primary power. And then also pulling data off the product. We did a wire transfer as opposed to the wireless, like I mentioned before. We designed for the clinical environment, not the home environment. Some products, the only market is a home healthcare product. Of course, that's a choice. For this product, we opted to just keep it in clinic for now. Sorry, my corgi is chewing the cables underneath me. Apologize. So when you don't have to design for a home environment, it certainly simplifies, the usability work that needs to go into it. And again, you put the onus on training the users, the clinicians, rather than designing a intuitive and a more intuitive and easier to use product. So you avoid a lot of that human factors work, and then also the 60601-1-11 electrical safety testing that would be required. So simplify the design. On the testing side, limit the firmware reviews just to safety. So of course we followed 62304, the software development process, but we completed only 30% of the verification, focused only on the highest patient risk areas. And then limited white box verification for only those high risk modules. And then we skipped the GUI verification again, because you can put process controls in place for the trial. Also, limit the ruggedization testing. So we developed a custom testing protocol, presented to the FDA for review, but really we had a white glove protocol to handle the device in the study at the study sites. We didn't need to do any ISTA testing, therefore no commercial packaging needed to be designed. There was a requirement to do VOC and particulate gas pass-through testing, because that's clearly a high-risk area in the product. And then, focusing on risk, electrical safety, is paramount. It's in contact with the patient. Patients are compromised. So the collateral -1-2 ENC testing, as well as the applied part testing, had to be done. And so focus on what's the most important. We also designed the product to meet 2-4, the safety requirement for cardiac defibrillators, because you could argue that this product is as interventional as a defibrillator. When you look at manufacturing, how do you get these clinical units built? So we built the clinical trial units, at CoolTech. There was no lag in the manufacturing transfer. The volumes of this product is still relatively low, and you can build, document the builds for each one individually, saves tremendous time. And then also on the back end, once you built them, we didn't need to do a full process validation. We simply black box tested the key clinical functionality and safety features. We did have to do the full validation on the disposable itself, because clearly that's in contact with the patient. So getting clever on building the prototypes, the clinical trial units, documenting it just enough to show that that it's safe for someone to use in a trial. So on to the trial itself. Minimize the product features needed for safety, and put some of the onus on the trial itself and the folks running the trial. So, for example, we had a leak monitoring process to look for occlusions as a procedural control versus some sort of fancy leak algorithm that you could put in the system. It could be done, but it didn't need to be done to get the data for the trial. Trial design itself, build a soft opening in the study. So the indicated use here is 24 hours, but we started with an 8-hour use period for the first 10 patients to work out bugs and check on the dosing. And then if we needed to revise the protocol, which we've done, submit the notices and get those change requests approved. And then of course, if you're trying to recruit very unique patients, run the study at multiple sites. So keep the number of patients small initially at one site because there's only so much you can manage, but eventually scale up as you need to recruit more patients. So these are the study sites that CoolTech is using as part of the clinical study. So yeah, so there you have it. These are the four areas, this framework that we applied for CoolTech. You know, when you have a limited budget, limited time frame to get a product in clinical trials, you know, these are the areas that, you know, are an option for trimming schedule, optimizing budget, and so this is the case study that we have for CoolStat. Again, the regulatory path I mentioned, the product is still in clinical trials, but we are, you know, looking at the add-on the safety features. Some of the things that we left off of the trial device can be added on now, and the other thing that's going on is exploring the other indications and what impact that has on the platform that was developed for the trial that then can be used for future trials or commercial launch. So what additional work needs to be done, right? So update the updates from the trial. And again, we're constantly finding updates along the way, deciding which to put back into the trial devices or not. Conduct the final summative evaluation with the intended users and not the actual study personnel. Any added features need to be verified. And then of course, you know, ramp up manufacturing of the box itself, since the disposable already has a manufacturer. So in conclusion, you know, risk mitigation is critical. And you know, the first question is, how do you get the clinical data? You know, animal studies is one thing, but getting functioning IRB approved devices in a trial is another. So focus on those key requirements around safety and efficacy to get that data quickly. And really think of the trial as a dry run for your product's commercial launch. You're almost expected to have bugs and issues that can be refined. Sometimes units just lose power, or there's you know, things are just not functioning. So go in there and make those fixes. It's a dry run for your commercial launch. And then of course, you know, last but not least, have that plan to address the gaps between, you know, what you're putting in a trial and the commercial launch. So that is it. So it's pretty quick talk. Again, I think CoolTech being a multidisciplinary team, you know, we were able to do this full development, you know, at CoolTech. We worked with a partner to run the human factors studies and get the data we needed to inform at least the first pass of what the product feature should be from a use perspective. You know, designing the desiccant, getting the mask to work appropriately, you know, on various you know, patient anatomy is somewhat challenging, but the product is in trials now. And again, if you think about everything that we did to simplify the device, you know, when you have an engineering team of 5, 6, 7 people, you know, burning, you know, and you cut out connectivity, you minimize, you know, packaging design or eliminate packaging design, you know, you can really save 6 months, and that burn rate translates into the, you know, the rough numbers that I shared, where we deferred those costs to later, when you now have clinical data that you can take to an investor and say, here's what we got, here's the improvements we need to make, here are the different market, you know, other markets we could pursue, you know, and here's our plan. You're just better equipped with what you need when you talk to investors, and that's what's going on right now.
Andy, while we wait and see if anyone has questions from the audience, please, everyone, feel free to chime in. I guess my question would be, what are some of the biggest risks to moving that quickly and to, you know, cutting out some of the unnecessary things, quote unquote, unnecessary, but what do you really have to be on the watch for?
Yeah, I mean, I would say one of the biggest risks would be, you know, like just bugs. When you think about like building more devices than say 5 for, you know, a V&V run, and you're kind of just doing prototype builds at a, you know, at a design firm, you know, it's not in production. Everybody that's taken a product from design to manufacturing, there's just bugs that you find as you scale things up. So, I think that would be one of the biggest risks, is the product having a bug in a trial where, it's not a patient safety thing. It's more of like, it's just maybe not working adequately. And so I would say that would be, it comes down to, like, again, how much money you have, how much time you have, what's most important to just demonstrate. But you're still going to have maybe things that aren't working, or maybe if a screen freezes for some reason or something like that. So the other thing I'll share with the group is, I am an engineer, but I did not do any of this development. So I would love to do my best to answer your questions, but certainly I can put you in touch with the team that was doing a lot of the detailed work here to get you some of those answers. But yeah, anytime you're going fast, there's a risk for things not working adequately. But that's showbiz, I guess, right?
Yeah. So, just as a general question, with a streamlined model, right, you're trying to reduce risk. But then if you have to make changes to the product based on the clinical trials, do you then have to do additional clinical trials?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it comes down, if you're asking about CoolStat, it really comes down to what changes you made. So based on the clinical experience, like if it's a user challenge, you can run another user study and submit that to FDA and say, look, here's our trial data, here's the finding, we fixed this product feature, we feel confident, and here's our case for actually approving the product. If it's related to the actual therapy, then the same argument applies. It just comes down to whether FDA, the regulatory strategy, whether they're going to approve it or not. Like if we were having issues with, are we humidifying the air appropriately, or is it cooling adequately, and we go in and out of chiller or something like that? Like clearly you have to run another study there. But again, a lot of these nuanced sort of study design questions, I would have to defer to a regulatory expert. Yeah, good question, Carmela.
Oh, that's a great one from Judy. How long has the process taken so far for this product?
Yeah, so to be honest, the COVID has significantly impacted the trial. Not to mention just there are very challenging patients to recruit. So the trial itself, has gone on, longer than a year. I'm trying to be careful with how much I can actually disclose related to like the trial and the status. But and then up front, this product was invented by CoolTech and Johns Hopkins, and so there's at least 2 or 3 years up front of like, is this therapy going to does it work? And you can actually do studies with hospital air, which is some of the stuff that was done. So when you kind of know that, and you've done some early animal studies that show that it's effective, now we're talking about, okay, this early prototype, pre-design control prototype, works. That's when that one slide says, when do you know when you're ready to start thinking about a clinical trial? The development, getting to the trial is about a 12-month process when you go from, okay, it works, to requirements, to, clinical trial units. When you think about all the additional sort of features, like I mentioned, that we excluded, that easily goes to 18 months to 2 years. So yeah, so that's the kind of finger painting sort of timeline that it took on this project. Yeah, as everyone knows, medical device development is anything really but fast when you step back and look at everything. But it really comes down to being smart with what you have when you have it.
Andy, can you kind of elaborate a little bit on whether there's any pushback from, when you're going into a clinical trial with a device to gather data that's not quite fully flushed out and where you want it to be, maybe doesn't have some of the capabilities and characteristics that you wanted to have moving forward. Is it hard to gather user data on that, or are people pretty willing to kind of roll with the imagination of what it can be and understand what it does?
Yeah, I guess I'll do my best to answer that. I mean, I think number one, this is like for this application specifically, it's a natural, body response. So we're really just accelerating that. And there is risk there if you fall asleep at the wheel and you freeze someone, right? But there's also other cooling approaches and the general acceptance of temperature management as a therapy was helpful in getting the approval from the IRB to run this study. I'm sure there are other nuances there to the approval process that I don't know that I can share with folks if they're definitely more interested in that part of this program. But yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the beauty of this therapy. And when you look at ice, bags on top of patients and other just more cumbersome ways, it is a fairly elegant approach to targeted temperature management.
Great. Any additional questions from our audience? We can take a couple more questions, or I can give you 25 minutes back of everyone's day. I think.
Yeah, I'll share one other thing. So yeah, the spin-off company came out of CoolTech. One of the founders of CoolTech was the CEO of the company, and in the last 6 months or so, CoolTech brought on a new CEO, a seasoned CEO, to kind of take the company to the next level. So our model as a product development firm, is to serve our customers doing traditional product development work, but also we have strategic areas that we're interested in pursuing because it's really interesting work, and this product came out of that sort of endeavor.
One last question.
I see another question.
Did you do an FDA pre-sub meeting?
Yes, there's been many, and that probably is deserving of a completely separate webinar on what to submit and when. Unfortunately I can't speak to that what worked and what didn't. But Judy, maybe we can follow up offline.
Yeah, we actually do have one member who wants to do something on that very soon, Judy, so I'll keep you posted on that too. I think I was having a call with them the other day, and the guy mentioned that pre-subs were just very close and near and dear to his heart. So I said, okay, great, we'll do a session all about that. So I'll make sure that we keep you posted on that one too. But I'll also make sure everyone has Andy's contact information in the follow-up email, as well as the video and the slide presentation. So I'd like to say, Andy, thank you so much for this presentation. I think it was really informative, and for everyone who attended, thank you so much for sticking with us, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you again soon at another event.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. This is great.
Thank you. Talk to you later.